Hello, very good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Louise Minchin.
Headlines for you at 6 o'clock this morning. The government says the UK's vaccination programme remains on track after Johnson & Johnson suspends a planned rollout of its COVID vaccine in the US and Europe.
Pressure builds on David Cameron as MPs prepare to vote on a parliamentary inquiry into the former Prime Minister's lobbying.
The charity shop boom. They report record sales as shoppers head back to the high streets to hunt out a bargain.
Another step back to normality as hot air balloon flights resume. So come fly with us.
The UK vaccine rollout wouldn't have been as successful without Brexit. The view of Sir James Dyson speaking exclusively to Breakfast about leaving the EU, jobs here and abroad, and who does the vacuuming at home.
There was a late scare for Chelsea, but they are through to the semi-finals of the Champions League for the first time in 7 years.
Good morning from the roof of Broadcasting House in London, where it's a chilly start. It's a chilly start with some frost across the board. Many of us will have a dry and sunny day with a few showers, but cool along the North Sea coastline. I'll have all the details later in the programme.
Good morning. The top story for you on Wednesday, the 14th of April, is the Department of Health insists that its target to offer a COVID vaccine to all adults in the UK by the end of July remains on track after Johnson & Johnson suspended a planned rollout of its jab in the US, South Africa and Europe.
It follows reports of very rare blood clotting in some people who've had the jab in America. The UK has ordered 30 million doses of the vaccine, and the medical regulator says it will evaluate safety reports robustly before approving its use. Our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, reports.
An abundance of caution was cited by US health officials as the reason why they paused the use of the single-shot Johnson & Johnson COVID jab. The vaccine, which in Europe is branded as Janssen, was approved in the US in late February. Since then, there have been 6 incidents of very rare clots in the brain out of 6.8 million doses, so less than 1 case per million people immunised. All were women under 50, 1 of them died and 1 is critically ill.
I think this is an unusual occurrence of a serious adverse event that you want to make sure before you go forward, you investigate it thoroughly. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're pausing so that they can look at it more carefully.
Similar, very rare clots have occurred with the Oxford AstraZeneca jab, and scientists are investigating whether this type of vaccine technology could be implicated. 30 million doses of the J&J Janssen vaccine are on order for the UK, although it's yet to be approved. It's hoped the delay in the rollout won't slow the vaccination drive here.
These are vaccines which are global workhorses of the vaccination programme. It's a lot of vaccine that potentially might not be used. And I think that would be tragic because you're much more likely to have a severe adverse outcome if you catch COVID. I mean, this is the thing which is much more likely to cause clots than the vaccine.
The biggest concern is globally. The plan was to immunise 1 billion people worldwide with the vaccine this year. If that's disrupted, it will slow efforts to finally bring the pandemic under control. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
A major UK trial looking at whether COVID vaccines can be mixed, meaning different ones are used for first and second doses, is going to be expanded.
Adults over 50 who've already had the first dose of Pfizer or AstraZeneca can apply to take part in the study, as our health reporter Michelle Roberts can explain.
Currently, the NHS offers people an identical COVID-19 vaccine for their first and second doses. But some experts believe switching to a different brand of vaccine for the second dose might give broader and longer-lasting protection against the pandemic virus and new variants of it, as well as offer more flexibility to vaccine rollout. More than 800 people have been helping researchers investigate this in a trial called COMCOV. They've received 2 doses of either Pfizer, AstraZeneca or a combination of both to see which works best for immunity. Results from this first stage are expected next month, but the investigators now hope to recruit around 1,000 people aged 50 or older to take part and test more vaccines in different combinations. That includes the new Moderna vaccine and the Novavax one that's expected to be approved soon in the UK.
Dosing with one, then dosing with the other. And that would give a lot more flexibility if there was any problems with supply for one vaccine, for example, or you changed in recommendations for different age groups. Then if someone's been primed with one vaccine, they're not locked into getting the same vaccine for the second dose. And we will be testing those combinations against the new variants as they come through. So the blood tests we obtain, we'll test them against the new variants to see potentially if they offer any broader protection against multiple different strains.
Volunteers need to have already had one COVID jab on the NHS in the past few months and be willing to travel to a regional NHS hospital trust site in England to take part. They'll have blood taken to check how well vaccines trigger an immune response. The study will run for a year, but there should be some reportable findings by June or July to shape how the UK and the world continues to protect populations against this deadly virus. Michelle Roberts, BBC News.
There will be a debate in Parliament today to decide if there should be a full inquiry into the links between the former Prime Minister David Cameron and the failed finance firm Greensill Capital.
Boris Johnson insists the independent inquiry he's ordered into Mr Cameron's lobbying will have carte blanche to talk to anyone. But Labour says the review has all the hallmarks of a cover-up. Our political correspondent Damien Grammaticus reports.
The actions of a former Prime Minister and those of current ministers. Labour says they've brought the shadow of a scandal that Parliament must investigate. Or it fears the review Boris Johnson has set up will be a Whitehall whitewash.
Day by day, new revelations are coming out about Greensill. We need a proper inquiry to get to the bottom of this, not the half-hearted half-inquiry that the government have announced so far.
The latest revelations that the former head of government procurement began working part-time for Greensill Capital, the company at the heart of recent lobbying concerns, while he was still a civil servant. Bill Crothers says his move in 2015 followed established procedure, was approved, and he believes not uncommon. Labour says the real questions are for the Conservatives. How, in 2011, the financier Lex Greensill became an unpaid advisor in the Cameron government. How, in 2018, his firm was given lucrative work linked to NHS payments. And his company hired David Cameron, now out of office, who the next year arranged a private drink with Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, and Mr Greensill. And last year, he texted Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, seeking access for Greensill to government COVID funds. This was David Cameron and Matt Hancock working for him more than 10 years ago. Mr Cameron has said he broke no rules. Mr Hancock that he reported his meeting with Greensill and acted properly. The Chancellor says he's been open too. He's released private texts he sent to Mr Cameron in which he says he pushed the Treasury to help Greensill. And the government says its inquiry can ask anybody whatever it needs. But Labour insists what happened behind closed doors was cronyism and an independent inquiry is needed. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Westminster.
Protesters have clashed with police in Minneapolis for the third night in a row after a black man was shot dead on Sunday. The policewoman who fatally shot Dante Wright has resigned, along with the police chief.
It comes as the trial of the officer accused of killing George Floyd in the same city begins hearing from defence witnesses. Our North America correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher has more.
For a third night, police drove back protesters venting their anger over the shooting of another black man. Hit in the chest by a policewoman who confused her gun with her taser. In the middle of the trial for the officer accused of killing George Floyd.
Do you know the difference between a gun and a taser?
Under pressure, the policewoman resigned. She was a 26-year veteran of the force, followed by the police chief.
We're here, and we will fight for justice for this family, just like we're fighting for our brother.
George Floyd's family has come together in solidarity with the relatives of the dead man, Dante Wright, sharing their quest for justice and their loss.
I thought somebody was playing a joke on me. It hurt me to my heart. Dante was a beautiful child. He might not have been an angel, but he was our angel. Our angel. He belonged to us. He belonged to us.
Testimony about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Inside the courtroom, the defense took over after the prosecution rested its case.
What's your name?
More footage of George Floyd from police body cameras was shown to jurors. The defense is arguing that it was a drug overdose which caused his death, rather than excessive force by the officer who restrained him by kneeling on his neck. Testimony is expected to wrap by the end of the week, and the jury will begin deliberations shortly after that. There's a lot at stake in what it decides.
The authorities are bracing for the possibility of further unrest once there's a verdict. They were hoping that the resignation of the police officials would help to diffuse the anger, but so far that has failed to stop the protests. Barbara Platt-Usher, BBC News, Minneapolis.
The Queen has returned to royal duties 4 days after the death of the Duke of Edinburgh to mark the retirement of her household's most senior official. The monarch held her first in-person event to host a ceremony at Windsor as William Peel formally stood down as Lord Chamberlain. The Earl had overseen the arrangements for the Duke's funeral.
The world's longest rabbit has gone missing and is thought to have been stolen from its enclosure. That is a long rabbit, isn't it? That's Darius.
It's called Darius.
Yeah.
He's a continental giant rabbit measuring 4 feet long who disappeared from his home in Stolton in Worcestershire on Saturday night. His owner, Annette Edwards, has offered a £2,000 reward for his return and said it was a very sad day. He claimed the Guinness World Record for the longest rabbit alive back in 2010.
I didn't know there was two things there. One, I didn't know there was a longest rabbit award, and
it seems,
yeah,
and it's 11. What is it in 20? What do you say?
20.
Was it 2010?
Yeah, it was a long,
wow,
long lasting, and hopefully,
hopefully he'll get back home.
Safe return. If you've got a long rabbit, give it back.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.